Welcome, everyone, to the Super Connector, where we talk about all things related to the world of influence. Everything from sales to leadership, personal branding, networking, and my personal favorite, how to win friends and influence people. Today, we have a special guest, Christian Jack. Many of you may know him. Christian has a very long list of accomplishments that we're going to dig into throughout the episode. He's generated nearly 20 million in sales in 2.5 years. He's been through 14 sales training programs. That's impressive. He's had numerous positions, such as a setter, a closer, manager, sales director, chief of sales, a consultant, a CRO, a coach, and of course, a business owner. He's released a sales training in the high ticket space called Sales Dojo. Which I've only heard good things about, and I'm going to put the link in the comments down below. His students are consistently reaching the top of their leaderboards. He's done all of this, everything I've just told you about, within 2.5 years. Incredible. So yes, once again, there's a link in the comment section down below to his website, christianjack.com as well, and his coaching program called Sales Dojo. I think that this is the longest introduction I've made, but it sounds incredible, because you've made a lot of accomplishments. Christian, how are you doing?
I'm fantastic, Stephen. How are you?
I'm doing really good. This has been a while coming. I love to interview very popular people in the high ticket space as well as outside of it. And I'm really glad to have you on because you've made a big impact yourself.
Thanks for having me, brother.
So, yeah, let's get right into it. So, how on earth did you manage to achieve so much within such a short period of time?
That's a great question, and there's no hack. There's no like shortcut. I wish I could say that there was like one secret that did it all. Um, but I think above all else, it's just, hard work and keeping your focus on the goal at the end of the day. Like I said, there's no hack. There's no shortcut. You just got to do it, and most people just don't. You know?
Yeah, and it's pretty tough. How did you develop a discipline like that over the years, though? Because you must have
Mm,
been really hardworking in previous jobs, or maybe it was sports or something that
yep.
required a tremendous amount of discipline. How did you develop that?
Definitely. I got to thank my parents for that one. They raised me that way. They put me in swimming. I was in a pool at 6 weeks old to learn how to swim or float at that point.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I was old enough, I think I was about 3 years old, they put me into a swim team. And so we lived at the beach. My parents didn't want me, growing up and going to the beach with my friends and them having to worry about me getting like caught in a rip current or anything like that.
Yeah.
So they put me in swimming team early on, and I was one of those kids that just spent, 6, 7 hours a day in the pool twice a day. I swam literally on Thanksgiving morning, Christmas morning, New Year's Day, like everything. Even though I didn't want to, my parents still took me to practice on all the holidays, and that was just life. It was normal for me. And so I think that was the main thing that contributed to it. And then I was also my mom was a piano teacher, and I was her son, so naturally I had
Of
to,
course. Yeah.
hold up the piano teacher's name. So I was practicing piano 3 hours a day as well. Did all of that for about 12, 13 years.
Mhm. Would you consider yourself and would you call yourself a high achiever?
I would, yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much anything that I do. My older brother, it's funny. I was always chasing after him. He's like 7 years older than me. So I
Yeah.
think that also kind of plays into my competitive spirit. But I was always chasing him, and he always said, anything that you touch, this was once we got older and like we became better friends rather
Mhm.
than just fighting all the time. But he said, anything that you touch, Christian, just turns to gold. And it's just I think a gift that God's given me that I can pick up things pretty quickly and do pretty great things with them. So I'm very, very blessed.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned swimming because I was speaking to someone about this the other day that does Ironmans. It's
Yeah.
like all technique. it's like
Yep,
it's all technique. And a lot of
hmm
people will think, well, it's endurance, and yes, but I guess that has definitely passed over to what you're doing these days as well,
for
because you have
sure.
to be very efficient in what you do. It's not just brute force.
Hmm
Yeah.
100%.
So can you tell me a little bit about your networking course and about your coaching program called Dojo?
Yeah, absolutely. I can talk about the networking course first because I kind of created that. It's a little over a year ago now, actually, where I created it because I saw lots of sales trainings around, and at that point, I didn't feel like I really had enough experience to confidently bring sales training to the marketplace with all the great people that were out there at the time. And one way that I had really increased my income and sales was through networking and really just implementing everything that I knew about sales and psychology into just doing sales with other people in a different form than most people had thought of it. So everybody's been taught, go through the discovery and the emotions and objection handle, all that stuff on a sales call, but they forget that that is a skill that transfers everywhere in life.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest places where people miss out on it is in networking because, they say your network is your net worth. And it's true. Like nothing that we do as humans is ever by ourselves. And anyone who's ever done anything great in their life had someone else who was helping them in a community around them. And so once you accept that and you realize that your sales skills can transfer into, like you said earlier, making friends and influencing people,
Yeah.
then it ultimately just builds a almost like a cushion around you where no matter what you're doing, you always have great people around you and you always have abundant opportunities around
Yes.
you. So that's really why I made the networking course was to teach people how to truly have abundance and transfer their sales skills outside of just a high ticket closing call into the real world and connecting with people. And then eventually, that kind of um, grew some traction, had a few hundred people go through it, and then, just gained more experience in management and consulting and more sales stuff over the next year. And just recently introduced the Sales Dojo, which includes everything that I had put in that networking course. I put all of that into the Sales Dojo, and it's even cheaper. So, anybody who wants to learn all about that stuff, that would probably be a good place.
Yeah, I've only heard good things about it. And the way that I heard about it is quite interesting.
Yeah.
Someone reached out to me on Instagram because they saw some shorts that I put out of this podcast.
hmm
And I can't remember what they said, but I've seen you around before. Do you want to talk? And
Uh-huh.
we spoke for a while. And then we did a role play. It was like a role play of him as a closer.
Uh-huh.
And then and then I asked him, like, this is really interesting what you're doing because he's putting out some personal branding stuff as well
Sure.
with CapCut and that. And I said, where have you learned all this? Because I'm in Undeniable Closer Mastermind, and I've learned a
hmm
lot of things. And you're doing something like, kind of along the same lines. And he said, well, have you heard of a guy named Christian Jack? And I said,
hmm
no, I don't know. I don't trust people with two first names. So I said,
I've
all
had
right,
that my whole life.
yeah, all right. Well, who is this guy? And then he forwarded me to your program. And when I looked at it, I thought this is really, really good. But at the time, I
Mm.
had so much on my plate. But I'll tell you what,
Yep.
I'm definitely going to check it out now because that's something that networking really interests me. And that's part of the reason why I started this podcast.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, great. And yeah, as you were speaking and you were talking about networking, of course, if you take a look in any Webster's or any type of dictionary, there's going to be multiple definitions for one word. Um, but usually people have their own understanding or their own definitions of it. And so when you think of the term network and networking, what does it mean to you? How would you define it yourself?
I think it's just as simple as building relationships and making connections with people to exchange some sort of value, whether it be information or contacts or experiences or um, business opportunities, whatever it might be. But I think the key is there in the building relationships and exchanging value. Those two things I would say are really at the bedrock of proper networking because a lot of people just think networking is connecting with people and saying hi and like, here's my 15-minute Calendly link. Let's hop on a call and chat. But
Yeah.
it's not that because that doesn't lead to anything. Like there's no purpose behind it.
Mhm.
So you have to put everything in context of like what is the actual goal. Um, and so the goal, in my opinion, when I network, is building relationships that will lead to the exchanging of value in some way, shape, or form. And usually that's initiated by me towards somebody else if I'm networking with them. And then good networking towards me is the same exact thing. It's not just, hey, I saw your profile and thought this was cool. I'm like,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's awesome. So when I started networking, I didn't know exactly what I was doing, but I did have a basic idea, or at least a basic template that I followed, and that I decided to use my own creativity. I've always been an extroverted person, very social, and
Uh-huh.
I learned the concept of value. But I thought to myself, I'm a complete beginner. So what type of value can I have to offer? How can you just kind of snatch value out of thin air, or what can you say to a beginner? Whereas, if you start networking, what can they offer so that they'll actually be
Mm,
taken seriously and they'll be considered a valuable person? Because a lot of people don't start because they believe that they don't have anything to offer. And so they feel
100%.
stifled. Yeah.
That's a fantastic one, and I get that question a lot. I put it right in the course, just a straight video that says value. Like that's just the title of the video. And value, I think people overcomplicate it and they'll try to like find something that they can give to another person that they don't already like know. And I think that's
Okay.
where it stops. Most people will try to give value in a way that it's some sort of piece of information or education that this other person doesn't already know for the sake of building up their knowledge base.
Okay.
But that's not exactly what value is, right? So first, you have to figure out like what is the real definition of value, right? And I really love how Alex Hormozy does things, and he says like operationalize these terms and break it down into its components as to what really makes something valuable. So value uh, is usually just like something that is deserving of like worth or importance. And it might also be like more on the holistic side or spiritual side. It's somebody's like principles or standards of behavior, right? And so if you break it down into those terms, now it's just, okay, what is something that deserves importance or something that deserves attention from this other human being? Um, and personally, it can be so many different things. But the easiest way to find it is just to like look at their social media, and there's tons of nuggets in everything that they do. And the reason this works is because somebody won't post something on social media unless they find it valuable, right?
Mhm.
Like that's the basic overarching principle here. If somebody makes a post about a quote and it's like some sort of motivational quote, there's something about that that prompted this person to want to share it, right? So it was valuable to them and they figure maybe it'll be valuable to somebody else. So if you just analyze the post that somebody makes, you'll start to find recurring themes of what this person finds valuable.
Mhm.
And then you just do what, again, Hormozy talks about all the time with like upsells. You just give the person more of what they already purchased, right? So it's the exact same thing with networking and value. You just give somebody more of what they already put out, right? Hey, I saw that you posted this quote by John Maxwell. Have you seen this one? Like super easy. Like
Did you
don't
see that on my profile? Because I do have one on, you did.
yeah.
That's great. That's
So
awesome.
like you can find so many different things. You can look through their photos and if they have lots of photos posted of their family, right? Maybe you can work that in there somewhere. If they made a post and they mentioned their dog's name, like maybe you can send them a gift card for a pet store. Like do something out of the box that nobody else does. That shows that you actually like did some work and you noticed things about them. That will also provide some unique value because attention And it shows that you put in time, and time is valuable, right? Another way that you can provide value is doing things to save people time, because
Okay.
time is valuable. So if you're able to save them a resource that's expensive to them, then you're now providing them value, whether it be a way to shortcut something that you saw them post about, or maybe they're, talking about how often they're hopping on and reviewing their own calls. Maybe it's like a chat GPT prompt list to be able to analyze their own call recordings at a deeper level than maybe what they've thought about doing themselves. So it can come in a lot of different ways, but the main idea is just like find resources that are valuable to people, whether it be information or connections or whatever it might be, time, and just provide more of that to them.
What do you think about uh, just this one, for example, and I want to know your take on it. Reaching out to someone which they say, I would love to connect with this person, learn more about them. They seem like they really know what they're doing. What about reaching out to them and saying, hey, would you like to do a role play with me?
I think depending on who it is, it can work. Again, it depends on what's valuable. If someone if someone were to reach out to me and do that, I would not find that valuable. It's
Yeah,
kind of just like a waste of time, right?
yeah.
Unless it was somebody like, if Jeremy Miner reached out to me and wanted a role play, I'd be like, okay, let's do
Yeah,
it, right?
that's
This
right.
could be valuable. But if maybe you're um I don't want to say like a ordinary closer. If you're just like somebody in the industry, you're on the up and up and you're trying to learn different ways of closing and you find somebody else who is the same, then maybe that's where I might do it. If this other person is always looking for, new one-liners, new closing lines, new ways to handle a certain objection, if you can see them active in all the different communities and always commenting and posting about that, then maybe that would be somebody that you could do that with. But remember, time is one of the most valuable resources that anybody has. So anything that you're doing, if it takes more time, then it's probably not as good of a networking tool, right?
Okay,
Here's the
got it.
value equation of, the, what is it? On the top, it's perceived likelihood of the event multiplied by the level of like desire in order to achieve that event,
Yeah,
divided by the time delay in order to achieve the event and the amount of time and effort in order to achieve it. And so if you raise the bottom number of a fraction in a division equation, then the result is less. So that would
yeah,
probably be less valuable than something that doesn't take any time for the other person to consume, right?
yeah. And I just thought for some reason, because the reciprocal in a fraction, the reciprocal is turning it upside down, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and reciprocity has to do with network. I don't know why I just thought about that, but maybe it does. Maybe it does belong in there somewhere. And when you talk
Maybe.
about, yeah, and when you spoke about value and what it is that people want, because everybody sees, something different as valuable, it reminds me of my favorite book, of course, How to Win Friends and Influence People, because there is an area in the book where they're talking about give people what they want. And there's a cow that they're trying to force into a barn and it won't go and it won't budge. And then one lady puts the finger in the cow's mouth because it's a baby. And
Right.
then it's like it's like it's milking, right? And then it
Right.
follows you right in there. So that is a
Exactly.
good technique, and it reminds me of that. All right, great.
Exactly.
Let's move on to the next one here. Okay. What were all the training programs you went through, and which ones did you like the most?
I get this question a lot. Um, I have massive respect for everybody, and I think a guiding principle of my life that's allowed me to accelerate my growth as much as I have is the idea that there is no right answer. And I'll explain that by saying everybody asks like what my favorite coaching program was, or like what the best sales trainer is, or anything like that. And my answer is always in true sales fashion, like, what do you mean by the best?
Yeah.
Right. And that will usually clarify with people like what they view as the best. And then that will further dictate my answer. So like my favorite one, I don't know that I have one personally. Just as an example, like I went through NEPQ
Yeah.
because I thought that it would play into my strengths. I'm naturally a fairly non-confrontational person. You can tell by the my mindset of like, there is no right answer as an example. And so I went through NEPQ because I thought that it played to my strengths. And so I would just get better at the things that I was already good at. But what I failed to realize was that in sales, I'm already winning those deals that, I'm doing well at. So that didn't really make much of a difference in my commissions. So for me personally, what I needed the most help with was the opposite of that, and being a little bit more confrontational and having a little bit more, uh, you know, gumption to be able to say hard things to somebody fairly directly and being direct with people. And so, like Bill Walsh's program is very, very good at that. Dan Loke's program is very good at that. Some people will call that extremely cringy and like way too pushy, but it was my low hanging fruit. And I took from it what I needed in order to raise that low hanging fruit. And those were the deals that I was losing, was where I needed more of that in my style. And so as soon as I got it, commissions like went through the roof. And so I think anybody who's looking at all the programs and like wondering which one the best is, you're asking the wrong question more than likely. And you should just figure out like where your own low hanging fruit is, what you need to improve on, where you're losing the most deals, and get training on that. And that will move the needle more than anything else.
Great. This question is going to be interesting because you kind of spoke about strengths and weaknesses.
Mhm.
Now, I'll say the question first. Do you believe that it's better to strengthen strengths or to strengthen weaknesses? And then I'll add a disclaimer here because I'm giving you a binary answer,
Yep.
but I don't think you're going to like say that there's any correct answer. So I'm just going
Only
to
a
leave it up
Sith
to
deals
you
in
with how to answer
absolutes.
that question, okay?
Yeah, only Siths deal in absolutes. Um, yeah, I mean, it depends on what you're trying to do. If your goal is to move the needle the furthest and get the most um, change in outcome for your work and your inputs, then it will be to work on and improve your low hanging fruit, right? Work on what you need to improve. If your goal is um, not to do that, if it's to go down a path of mastery and just get very good at one specific thing, then go ahead and improve what you're already good at. It's like
And
the jack of all trades argument, right?
yeah,
Like some people say, jack of all trades is the master of none, but most people don't know that the quote keeps going on to, but is often better than a master of none.
yeah. And I mean, listening to your answer, I mean, it does sound like you have to create a balance somewhere in the balance or balance there. I would rather call it a
Yeah.
symphony.
Yes.
Find out the symphony that works for you.
Yeah.
Because
It's
every note is
it's
not the same. Yeah.
exactly. I always equate it to two different analogies. Well, I'll go with the musical one here since we're going down that road, but it's like a
Yeah.
piano.
Yeah.
And when you're first learning, you're not going to learn how to use all 88 keys, right? You're going to learn how to use probably like 12 of them right in the middle. And then you start expanding that as you learn more advanced repertoire. And there's times where you need to use the high ones, and there's times where you need to use the low ones. But if you go throughout life saying that you only want to play the high ones, then like you're missing out on so much beauty and so much
Yes. Yes.
art that you could be using and that you could be leveraging. But it's tough to learn how to use it the right way and not overuse it.
And yeah, since we were talking about music as well, I may as well mention that another fellow that was on this podcast, and I asked him about all these training programs that he was on, and his response was, well, and I asked which is the best, and he
Yeah,
said, well, many instruments create beautiful music.
yep,
Right? Yeah,
exactly.
great. All right, so you said that you'd worked on, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. You said that you'd worked on 9 offers at once at one point.
Yep.
Okay, how is that possible? How is that possible?
Uh, it's possible through just number one. I'll quote Bill Walsh here, in a concept that he came out with when I was in his program, and it's called the 3 R's. It's results, relationships, and reputation. And so the first thing that matters most always is results. If you're a salesperson and you cannot get quality results in terms of being effective with the leads that you're given,
Mhm.
then that will never be possible because your reputation will just tank. Like everybody will know that you suck at what you do
Yeah.
and you won't be able to like get much of a job anywhere. So number one, just like focus on your results and getting good at what you do and being a good operator. Number two is relationships. I built relationships through networking. I didn't just teach it, right? I do what I teach. And so I built relationships with other people to where I had so many opportunities for offers around me because of the networking and because of my results from the offers that I was on already,
Yes.
that I had plenty of places to say yes to make money. I had offers coming in every day. I'd still get like 8 different offers a day, whether it be for, sales gigs or consulting or whatever it might be. And it was the same back then. I would get 5 to 8 messages a day from business owners or from closers saying, hey, we need somebody else on our team. There's an opening. Like, do you have any availability? And at that point in time, my goal was to learn as much as possible. And so I said yes to as many things as possible that made sense, that I knew that I could deliver on. And so then through that, I ended up building up a roster of probably about 5 or 6 at first.
Okay.
Um, Decent offers, but not great to start making money with. And then I would just sub out offers and add ones and subtract ones based on what made the most sense. I literally made an Excel spreadsheet. Again, this is like in the dojo. But if you work on multiple offers, you put in like how much you're making from the offer, how many hours you're working, and what level of happiness you have working on that offer. And then
That's
it auto calculates and sorts the list of offers based on what you should have at highest priority, based on, whatever you weight each category at. So, like for me, being happy and making a lot of money with a little bit of time is a great situation. So I ended up just taking more offers like that. And I would just remove offers from the bottom of the list, which would open up slots for more high-end offers. So, the 9 offers at a time, I was like managing 2, I was consulting for 1, and then I was selling for 6. And even the
oh,
6 that I was selling for, it was like very low volume. I made the expectations when I came into the offer that I was very low volume, that, I could take a certain amount per week and that was it, but that I would be highly effective with those calls. And I think that's the thing that matters the most is like just learning how to close business owners and managers on you coming onto the team as a sales rep. Because like
yeah.
if you can close them on you doing the thing, then they know that you're going to be able to close leads
Yeah.
doing their thing anyway.
Absolutely.
So just managing expectations was really how I did it. And as I'm sure you know, high ticket space is up and down. It's, amazing 2 or 3 months and then marketing shits the bed, or, their ads get shut down, or, they cull half the team, whatever it might be. And so I just rode those waves by having a more diversified portfolio of companies that I was selling for. So, even though I was selling for 6 companies at a time, I might have only been taking calls for 4 of them on any given week. And
I
then,
see.
I might have 2 calls a piece each day. So that's still only 8 calls in a day, which is fairly normal. But I just ended up kind of riding the waves of the space rather than having an insanely good month and then dropping down to the floor like most
Yeah.
people do.
Yeah.
So then I just was able to build up my skill set and my network and everything just so much more easily and consistently.
And the way you did it, it just sounds like there's so much more stability. What I
Yeah.
say? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. My
And
income just kind of like slowly went up.
yeah. And I mean, when you spoke about uh having an Excel sheet with, I
Mhm.
suppose it would say an auto calculation or a calculator in it, and you
Mhm.
factored happiness into the calculation. I've only known you for 30 minutes, but I'm gonna say that is such a Christian Jack thing to do. That's what.
Yep. Why is that?
Oh, it's just because it's very detailed and very technical.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would
I
say.
th I think it's something that a lot of people miss though as well. People
Yeah,
get so stuck in the grind of trying to make more money that they forget why they're trying to make more money. And you can just get stuck in that grind mentality for so long to where you put your head down and when you pick it up, like years have gone by and you've lost out on opportunities and lost out on a certain part of your life even. And that's the last thing that I want to happen for me. And so I place happiness and joy above most things in my life. And I've turned down many offers just because I don't think that I would be happy there with the team. And I mean, also just being happy on an offer means you're going to do better anyway, right? You're going to sell so much better if you're actually enjoying your time there. Um, so I think it's a really important thing that most people just don't think about, maybe, or maybe just nobody taught them to think about it.
Well, I think oftentimes what it is they think that the more money that's coming in, the happier they will be. And so that's the
Yep.
miscalculation that they have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I I've I've made a lot of money in a month and I've made very little money in a month. And while I would rather make more money in a month, like it still felt the same when it hit the bank account at the end of the day.
Interesting. Interesting. So, what was it like transitioning from a sales professional to a coach? And like,
Mm,
when throughout those 2.5 years did you make that transition?
great question. I started coaching per se, but not necessarily doing it for money. I would say probably a year and 3 months in, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
At that point, I had been on a mess ton of sales calls. I'd been through a bunch of different trainings. Um, and so I started just kind of working with other people that I was in training programs with. And I wasn't necessarily like coaching them. I was just, we were hopping on role plays. We set up meetings to practice and, just help each other out. And naturally through that, um, I put in a lot of time and effort into things if you can't tell. And so what usually happens is I start outpacing people that are around me. And so naturally, like we start out as friends and then the gap just slowly gets bigger and bigger to where like we still have the relationship, but then they're coming to me for help with things. And so it was just kind of a natural progression to where people were reaching out, asking for help on this or asking for help on that. And, I'd hop on calls and help them. And then, some people I really enjoyed working with. So I just set up like a recurring meeting with them. And then, started making enough money to where I was like, hey, I can make 5 grand if I'm on this sales call. Uh, I'm happy to meet with you, but like we need to figure this out a little bit. So then started charging a little bit and then just kind of more and more. And then eventually got to the point where I felt like I had enough experience with things to potentially start coaching, but I still had a little bit of imposter syndrome from like really going all in on it.
Yeah.
And what really changed that for me was I went to a bunch of business masterminds with business owners, just
Mhm.
doing different consulting deals and management stuff and giving talks at events and that sort of thing. And just was so affirmed in going to all those places that like people really don't know how to sell properly, effectively, ethically, morally. Um, and so that was really what flipped the switch for me. That was like, you know what? Like my imposter syndrome should not keep me from helping somebody change their life,
Yeah.
right? Because I see people around me, like Jeremy Miner as an example. Um, Man, he had a 16-year sales career where he made a ton of money, like a ton. Makes me look like nothing. And so I was like, you know what? I would rather just send people over to him to learn. Um, but then I kind of just worked through some limiting beliefs, and I worked with a guy named Bogdan Mikov, or technically it's pronounced Mitsov, and he helped me through some beliefs, and you know it really just kind of all came to fruition, I'd say probably 6 to 8 months ago, where I finally just decided, I need to just get over myself
Yeah.
and just start helping people and stop putting myself in the equation because it's not about me.
And do you feel as if you've kind of adapted or a new identity? Like, what was it like feeling how your identity changed? Was your previous identity gone and a new one came, or do you feel as if you improved Your
Great
previous
question.
identity. It is kind of an esoteric question, but I
Mhm.
think it's necessary.
I think when I started managing, that's where my identity shifted the most. Because I started managing teams and kind of coaching the teams under me and really taking care of other people more than myself just as a sales professional, taking my calls and being in my own lane.
Mhm.
And so that was where the biggest shift happened. And then when I decided to really fully start coaching, I think a smaller shift also happened to where, um, like as a manager, the work that other people do directly correlates to your own income. Whereas as a coach, it doesn't matter what other people do. That doesn't necessarily affect your income. And so your goal to help them improve is really all about them. And there's no like reward technically that you reap from helping somebody to get better, if that makes sense. Like you do get a fee, right? You do get paid for coaching people,
Mhm.
but the level of success that they have is not what is correlated to your own income. And so it was just a little bit of a shift there, I think.
Great. And was it during that kind of identity change, was it quite shocking to kind of realize, whoa, I am a leader? Like I'm demonstrating leadership skills constantly.
It was definitely a skill to learn when I got into management. I think it's just natural now really as a coach.
Mhm.
And I've been in some sort of leadership position like my entire life.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
so I don't think it was really a big shift, but it is something that's always top of mind is like sales and leadership and how they work together. I think that's a really big advantage that salespeople have that they forget.
Oh, the leadership part.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Because that's really what leadership is. John Maxwell fan, so you probably know this. Maxwell just says that leadership isn't about leading other people, it's just influence,
Yeah.
right? And so sales and influence are very, very closely related.
Yeah. Great. So now let's move on to personal branding because personal branding is all the rage these days. And I find it interesting because you don't have to do it a specific way. There's so many different ways that you can do it. So, what do you see as the greatest benefits of personal branding in 2024?
I think it's something that JD teaches really well in UCM as you incorporated, right? It's just you understanding that you are your own business, especially as a contractor. But anything in life, right? Whether even if you're a W-2 employee, business owners and managers will still come and look up your social media profiles. Like they still look at things. So I think it's a really big deal, and it can lead to a lot of good if you leverage it the right way.
Yeah,
And it can also lead to some bad if you don't leverage it the right way, if you leverage it the wrong way. But I think if you do nothing, then you're guaranteed that it won't help you at all. So it's just up to you whether you want it to help or not.
that's interesting because JD had said to me once, everyone has a personal brand. The people that don't have anything online, it's your name with question marks beside it. If you
Exactly.
have nothing, they're like, well, who is this guy? Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So now this is probably, well, I would say definitely, it must be answered in your networking product or your networking training. But maybe give us a little snippet of what it is. What recommendations do you have for sales professionals in the high ticket space when it comes to personal branding?
I would say just don't wait to do it. A lot of people think that they need to achieve some result before they're able to talk about their experiences or put themselves out there, like talk about the results. They feel like they need to achieve a result before they can talk about the results. But you can just document the journey just as easily as you can talk about results. And that's something that's very valuable to people. And if you've ever heard, Hormozy's old videos, he's like, I wish that Buffett and Munger had documented their journey in building their, in building their successes. So I'm here doing it for you,
Yeah,
right?
that's
It's
awesome.
the same exact thing. You can build such incredible communities and followings and groups of people just by documenting things. You don't have to necessarily achieve the result first.
I think it's great these days because right now I am documenting my fitness journey in boxing and I'm brand new.
Yeah,
And
it's
I'm
awesome.
doing day one, day two, day three. I'm putting up the videos where I'm getting punched right in the face. I'm putting it in slow motion. I'm like, I'm okay with that.
Where's the handle? I need to see it. I need to see it. Send it
Yeah,
to me
and so
afterwards.
and but the great thing about it these days is what I've realized is that when it comes to personal branding, you don't need to be an expert in order for people to watch it. People
Yep.
love a zero to hero story because they relate to it,
Yep.
and that's why a number of people I know in this space have started off saying this is day one in remote or day one of 365 days. Like I have a friend, his
Yep.
name is Reese Thompson, and
Hmm.
he said and it was 365 days to make $10,000 a month in sales. And
Nice.
I predicted he was going to hit it in half that time. He hit it in
Yep.
200 days. He just hit it. Yeah.
Nice.
I think it's just so awesome.
It
So
really is. And
yeah.
I think people just underestimate the power of that because it's like if you it's like if you see a movie and the hero is just perfect the whole time. It's like Superman without kryptonite. Like what's the point of even watching that movie?
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. I know. That's right. And a flawed character feels more personalized, feels more personal.
Exactly.
So, what do you see in the future of high ticket sales and that in high ticket sales, specifically the opportunities and offers
Mhm.
it provides?
Um, I think there's a big separation happening right now in that the great offers are doing well, and anything that's not 100% great is doing very badly,
Okay.
from what I've seen. And so, um, I think a great separation is coming in the space to where the great offers will continue to do very well. Not so great will just fall off the face of the earth. And there's a lot of high ticket sales professionals in the industry right now who will be competing for less and less jobs that are higher and higher quality.
Yeah.
And so, there's a really vast spectrum across salespeople in the industry, people who are less experienced, less skilled, people who are more skilled, less experienced, and people who are more skilled, more experienced. And there will be places for everybody. But I think above all else, it will require more work than it used to
Okay.
somewhere because buyers are more intelligent than they used to be, right? More experienced. Pretty much everybody's been through some sort of coaching program or course these days. And that was not the case 5 years ago when a lot of people were like starting in high ticket and the way that the world was built. So I think it's going to be very different in that the people that got into the space 5 years ago have a certain expectation of what it's like. And so they're either going to have to adapt to the changes that are being made, or they're going to get stuck in that old mindset and just continue to drop off from from that separation. The great will continue thriving and adapting, but then the people that don't, probably not so much.
Yeah. Well, even if they do fall off, the skills and sales are transferable to almost everything. I was trying
Everywhere.
to transfer them to my dating life, but I'm still a beginner, right? So
Yeah, it's funny. My wife knows all my objection handling lines now, so I
that's
gotta figure out
great.
other ways.
That's great. Well, you have to tell her she wins even if she loses, right?
That's right.
That's
That's
a little
right.
trick that you might have in your playbook.
100%.
All right. So what does the future look like for you? What's next for Christian Jack?
I'm not sure, to be honest. We're gonna keep working on the sales dojo. I think that's gonna be a long-term project that I have for quite a while. Um, but aside from that, I'm not sure. I've done a lot of, like I said, managing and consulting over the past year, year and a half, and I'm at a stage right now where I'm a little bit more tired of that. And so I've offloaded all of those projects for now. and just working on the sales dojo. So I'm not consulting any businesses. I'm not managing any teams. Anybody that comes to me for that, I refer them to other people. Um, and I'm really enjoying just kind of taking some time now because I think it's a season, um, which is a concept I talk about a lot in the dojo, is that like there's seasons for different parts of your life and for different things that you do. And right now I'm coming out of a really hard grind season. Like the past 2.5 years have been tough. And I've worked my ass off, 12, 18-hour days. And so I'm I'm ready to kind of take a step back and reset. And coaching and teaching other people is really fulfilling for me. And I really enjoy it and I'm great at it. And so I'm just kind of taking the time to enjoy that. Where that goes, I'm not sure. I think there's a lot of doors that open with sales. Like you said, it's a meta skill. It's something that transfers literally everywhere. And so I'm taking a look at what that might look like outside of the high ticket space, I would say is one
Okay.
sort of project that I'm looking at. Um, sales training, sales team consulting, leadership training, et cetera, in the corporate world, in brick and mortar businesses. Like there's a lot of different places and there's a lot of different people in the world that need help in influence and persuasion and how it relates to what they're doing outside of high ticket space. Um, but the high ticket space is pretty much everything that I've ever known.
Yeah.
And before that, I was just a music teacher. So I didn't have any sort of business experience. So now I think the next steps is going to be starting to explore other industries and what they're doing and how they work and how I might be able to help them with more things and bringing on
Great.
partners with me to do it. So really exciting.
Great. And here comes the last question, something I always ask everybody on this podcast. There are a lot of people who are just coming in, like 2.5 years ago when you just came in. And a lot of them feel intimidated. They have a tremendous amount of imposter syndrome. They don't exactly know what to do, so they're just trying all sorts of different things, but they're struggling. Now, if they're, in terms of motivation and inspiration, if you could just summarize, even if it's possible in one sentence or a few sentences, something you could say as a word of inspiration or guidance, what would you say?
Inspiration, I would take the quote from James Clear. It says, "The brilliance of the stars would be invisible without the vast darkness of space behind them. Don't wish away the difficult portions of life because they provide the necessary contrast to enjoy the joyful ones." So if you're going through, a time where it feels dark and it feels like there's no hope or you have no direction, you're not sure what to do, just kind of floating out in space,
Yeah.
just remember to enjoy that because when you are successful, when you're, 80 years old and you've been married for the last 50 years, you're going to look back on the time when you were trying to find, the love of your life, when you were dating, when you were, meeting crazy people, going on a couple of dates and realizing they were batshit. Like you're gonna look back on that time of your life with a smile and laugh. And so just realize that that's the time that you're in and savor it, knowing that that will not always be there and you'll look back on it fondly.
Awesome. And that reminds me of the owner, I can't remember his name. I believe he was the owner of Apple. And he said, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward.
Yep.
Right. And that's what it reminds me of. Now, Christian, I was so happy to have you on. This is one of the best episodes I've ever had. You're a very intriguing person. I mean, you're incredibly determined, very disciplined. The amount that you've achieved in 2.5 years is incredible. It's quite astonishing. And I think that this is going to be very helpful to a lot of people. You've brought so much value here, and I'm really honored to have you on my podcast. And I guess we'll just wrap it up right now.
Much appreciated, Stephen.
All right, thanks a lot, Christian. Just wave goodbye to everyone. Thanks.